Hello and welcome to the Sacred Rainbow Current Global Online Summit, bringing together the multifaceted custodians of our planet and humanity to reveal deep truths, wisdom, and tools to enable the guardianship of our planet for the future generations. My name is Kerry Bridget McCrory, and I am your summit host and creator, airing from the stunning, beautiful valley of Coniglen, in the heart of the Sperrin Mountains of Northern Ireland, Éirú. My mountain is called Spatnadua, and my river today is all the tiny streams that run from the crevices of the mountains and into the burn below. Today, I am absolutely delighted to be joined by Vivienne Campbell, who has worked as a medical herbalist since 2003. For many,
Sorry.
you say hello, because usually I
Sorry,
get
I
people
just want to say thank you very much for having me. Hello.
Yeah, lovely Vivienne. So for many years, Vivienne lived in County Clare, Ireland, where she had a herbal medicine clinic, and she is now based in Portugal. Vivienne teaches classes on herbal medicine, wild food foraging, and natural skincare in Ireland, Portugal, and Wales, and teaches worldwide via her online courses and classes. She runs classes from beginner's level to professional on a range of different areas of working with herbs. She has appeared on Irish television numerous times and given talks, lectures, and herb walks at various international professional conferences. Vivienne loves teaching people how to use herbs simply, effectively, and joyfully. She believes it is everyone's birthright to know how to use common local plants as nutritious wild foods and health-enhancing natural remedies. She loves to empower people to take more control of their health by sharing this knowledge and teaching these skills. And she particularly enjoys watching people experience the various ways that herbs can help to transform and improve their life. So Vivienne has a BS Honours in Herbal Medicine and is a professional member of the National Institute of Medical Herbalists, the Association of Foragers. And she's a beautiful lady who I have been following for a wee while, her teachings, and she is wholeheartedly a lover of the earth and all the wonders that the plant brings forth into our life. So I'm just going to ask Vivienne, I'm going to dive straight in. As a child, did you feel you had a relationship with plants, or was this something that came to you later? And can you pinpoint when your interest in the essence of plants and their healing gifts began?
I think it was something that came to me later, but I was young. I was really a teenager, but I did grow up somewhere relatively rural, so my accent is very jumbled, and so I grew up in Scotland, but I lived in Ireland for 18 years. I spent time in North. I spent time near where you are as well.
Wow.
But yeah, so I mean, it was normal to where I grew up. There was plenty of green areas and the sea and trees, but there was a total disconnection with the earth and plants. It was all about having cars, getting a second car, and which was crazy because it could have been about growing your own and looking after, but it was the 70s and 80s in the west of Scotland, and there wasn't that interest in. So I experienced the disconnection of it there, even though it was somewhere that was rural-ish. And it came to me really when it really started to come quite strongly when I was a teenager. I went vegetarian very young, and I'm not anymore. I want to be clear about that, but I went vegetarian when I was 12, and I was really interested in health which, you know, the west coast of Scotland, living in Glasgow is one of the top 10 reasons to get and die of heart disease, you know. So I wasn't growing up somewhere that was healthy, you know. So it was really odd to be into food and be vegetarian, and then I went vegan when I was 17, I think. I was still at school. And so the plant stuff really came through that, and it came from the necessity of having to find things that nourished me well, and so looking for new ingredients and just that whole connection with the plants and the healing. I think really that was how it found me. And I needed that real nourishment and that real kindness and sort of saving of your soul, I think, that comes from the plants. I can't imagine these healing medicinal plants, because I can't really imagine which way my life would have gone if that hadn't come to me and I hadn't followed that. I was always very good at listening to my instincts about what I knew was the right thing to do, even when everything external would tell me it was wrong. And it was just like there was this little chink of light in the dark, and it was really like feeding that, you know, just make that little chink lighter. What can you do to grow more of the light and open more of it up? And that for me it was that. So it all grew from there, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had that high consciousness. I can pick that up from you talking straight away, that you were a wee child and you had like a consciousness about you. And I know very much what you mean
Yeah.
about that era, the second core, because I'm like yourself. I grew up in the era of, I'm going to call it, everybody was watching Dallas and Dynasty.
Yeah, that was it. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it was all about material gains,
yeah.
and there was
Loads of money, loads of money. Remember Harry Enfield, loads of money.
money was God, and there was absolutely some sort of massive cutoff from nature. Because
Yeah,
when I think of my childhood and plants, I think of maybe making daisy chains, but that's as far as it goes, or here in
yeah,
the streams.
yeah,
And like yourself, now you to me, you sounded pretty young, becoming a vegetarian,
yeah,
so young, and then I can see how that really took off. You had to connect with, well, how am I nourishing my body,
yeah,
and the different aspects. Because I think like it's never too late to reconnect with nature. And I
yeah,
think my second stage of reconnecting to nature was probably my mid to late 30s.
yeah.
No. So you definitely were very conscious.
Yeah, and do you know what happened at the same time? It was Christmas, actually. It was Christmas Eve. All of a sudden, I just went, I'm going vegetarian. I can't eat it anymore. And I joined Greenpeace as well. And I can't begin to tell you how odd, you've triggered it now with the Dallas and Dynasty stuff. I can't begin to tell you how odd I was considered. Now, I was considered odd before that anyway. But it was so obvious to me that the land and the sea and the water and the air were being poisoned, and I couldn't understand why people couldn't understand that was a problem, you know. And it was just so obvious to me, and I was just slagged off for years and years and years for it, and called this and called that and all the rest of it. But it's like, I mean, show me an animal that deliberately would poison its home and poison its food and poison its water. None of them do it, you know. But this era, because everything is about money, it didn't matter what was being done as long as there was a profit being made, and people would be described as having a good job. It didn't mean they were doing something good. It meant they were paid a lot of money. And I remember correcting a relative about it, because the comment was, oh, so and so, he's got a very good job. And I said, no, he's got a well-paid job. Whether or not it's a good job is another debate. Yeah. You know, but that was the attitude. And for me, it was just like, I was 12, you know, this Christmas Eve when I went vegetarian, and I joined Greenpeace, and I tried to find recycled paper, and I grew up somewhere where there weren't really shops. So it wasn't like I could just go to a different shop and buy it. It was hard work. I think I had to buy it by mail order. And I probably got it via Greenpeace or something. but it was just so obvious to me that we have to look after the earth.
Yeah.
You know, and I couldn't understand why other people couldn't understand it, and they're copping on now. You know,
What I would say is you were one of those beings, people, you were actually being penalized for being in tune with yourself.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
if
yeah,
you're in tune with the
yeah,
earth and the
yeah,
water and the sea and the air,
yeah,
they're the elements that live inside us. So you're in
yeah,
tune with yourself.
yeah,
And,
yeah.
thank God you followed your heart. That's all I've seen.
Well, I couldn't have not done it. You know, I couldn't have not. If I hadn't done it, I wouldn't still be alive. You know, it was that important, is how I feel about it. It's felt compelled. I can't imagine what else I would have done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any experiences that you can share about the nature of plants and their miraculous capabilities?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to be too. I try to think of something a bit more normal. Just I mean, all I do, this is all I've done for a quarter of a century, you know. So between training, I did a degree to train and qualify, and practicing all this time. It's literally a quarter of a century of my life has been doing this. So I mean, it's the simplest thing. It's that I cut my finger recently, and again, I didn't need to go to the hospital for, to accident and emergency or the emergency room to treat it, because I did train in first aid, so I do know how to do professional first aid. But just with the things I have to hand, I was able to treat that. I was able to prevent it getting infected. I was able to get the wound to heal and just keep it clean. And the amount of times, just with minor injuries, I've managed to save myself or people around me a trip to the hospital for sitting in the queue for hours, you know, and then getting stitches and an antibiotic is just so many times. But to the that's a really practical. I've got lots of little, you know, bits and pieces I've done to myself that have healed really well. But on the deeper level, in the clinic, it would never fail when people come in for an appointment. And the first appointment, we do a really in-depth case history. So I ask about people's health, but you know, their health throughout their life. So times in hospital, different medical conditions, and then each system of the body, and their diet, you know, how they're eating and what their digestion's like, what's their sleep's like. So you get this really thorough overview of what's going on. I compare it to being a detective, actually. If you're in, it's quite good, because most people have seen a television program or a film about that. You know, if you arrive at the scene of the crime, and you gather the information, the clues from there right away, then you've got the most chance of finding out what happened. And with the medical consult, whereas if you leave it and you don't discover it until, you know, a week or two later, and you don't ask the right questions and you don't take away the right thing, then you don't get a clear picture. Whereas when you do this really in-depth consultation, you get this really, even just that process for people is really healing quite often, because they haven't put things together in their life, they haven't thought about things that way, they haven't seen the connections between things. And then, you know, every prescription is personalized to the individual. It's not this herb for that, that herb for this herb for that, lists of things matched with ailments. It's totally personalized to what's medically indicated by the person sitting in front of you, what they've revealed, what they've said. But it never fails to amaze me in that situation how much people put up with, how long they suffer from things. And in a lot of, I mean, you can't ever guarantee anything's going to work, or you know, that a medical treatment is going to work, including with pharmaceuticals and surgery. You can't guarantee it either. But a lot of the time, people would respond very well and get much better, you know, quite often very quickly. And it would just be for me bittersweet, because I was so glad that they were better and their life was better, and some changes, some circumstances really life changing. But it's bittersweet because they've suffered on for so long with it, because they didn't know that there were things there to help them. And a lot of the time with plant medicines, some of them are so simple and so transformative, and it's one of the reasons I teach so much. I can't teach the really complex medical stuff. It's individual things for medical consultations for safety reasons and all sorts of things, but I do a lot of general teaching. I do a lot of thinking about what is it safe for people to be able to learn for themselves. What is it that they can be empowered to do themselves at home? They're off out there buying supplements and things from shops and stuff from the chemist anyway for a large range of things. What is there that we can do better, that people can learn to understand better about their bodies, and have you know, more reliable go-to treatments for as that first line of helping themselves. And when I talk about your body, I mean all of it, you know, your emotions as well, and your mind, you know, not just the physical cuts and scrapes and things I was talking about. So
And so many people, they just simply don't realize, you know, that plants in general have all of this medical properties,
yeah,
and like on properties on all levels that can feed and nourishes. And that's something that, you know, our ancestral people were really, really connected to. And it would have been, I'm imagining, hard earned to learn what plants helped what, and how
yeah,
they could be used.
yeah,
But I sort of feel like, you know, things that should be in school, there's a wee flick,
yeah,
things that should be in school and be taught to us aren't
yeah,
taught and shared, and maybe some of the knowledge has been hoarded by certain industries to become a profitable thing, instead of like nature is so free for all
yeah,
of us, and there for all of us. And
yeah,
you know, it can be that what's healing for us is growing very close to us.
yeah,
One of the wee things I'll share, which it's not about a plant healing me as such, and I can't even remember what the flower or the plant was, but I remember after COVID, we were sort of locked in our houses for a long, long time. And then, you know, all of us had no freedom. We were allowed to walk in like a natural, you know, like in a beauty area or a place with
yeah,
lovely water and flowers. And I remember doing this in a local town, in a local, and I remember looking at a flower and appreciating it and thinking it was so beautiful, right? And then I remember walking away from the flower. And as I walked away from the flower, I can't explain this, but it's as if the flower sent out some sort of scent,
yeah,
and it called me back. And it was
yeah.
as if the flower was so grateful that it was being
Appreciated.
yes,
Yeah,
noticed. And I thought that was miraculous. And that's probably something that's there all the time.
yeah,
Our senses were more
yeah,
awake to it.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And all you need to, well, you know, to just tune into it. I don't mean to know everything and know how to do everything, but all you need to just begin to tune into it is just spend a bit more time in nature. That's all, you know. I mean, if you spend your time working with lots of different bits of technology, then you'll be a whiz at lots of different bits of technology and be able to go like this and talk to have a conversation with somebody at the same time and all the rest of it. But if you spend a bit of time in out in nature, then you do become more attuned to it. You know, what you spend your time and attention on, you get better at, you know. So that's it. And plants, part of their design is to attract people and animals. That's how they spread themselves. That's how they reproduce. You know, they want insects to lie on them. Insects have been rebranded as pollinators now, you know, but they cling to mammals, and they want, you know, I think this is something that's been lost. Humans are nature. You know, we are nature. Where if you listen to a lot of stuff about us in books or on the news, You'll hear about how bad we are, how much humans have done this and we that. And I sit and I listen to it and I think, why, less of the we. I've not been doing that. You know, a lot of people aren't doing that. A lot of people aren't intentionally going out there and damaging the earth. We're actually we're a really key part of this planet, and we can use our force for bad or we can use our force for good. You know, I don't think that at this stage I even agree that we're necessarily overpopulated. And I would have said for a long time, overpopulation is the biggest threat on the planet. I don't know that I even think that now, because I think it depends what you're doing. And we seem to, again, be told that there's either there's not enough population or there's too much. We're never told that we've got just the right amount, you know. And I know through working with nature, intentionally choosing to work with nature, how much good one individual can produce, how much good. And I mean this from watching my students, you know, you don't need to go off and dedicate your life to it like I have. You don't need to go and train and learn different things, but just through learning a few classes about the plants that grow around you, you don't even need to start working with them. But the effect that it has on people is, like you've described, you recognized it when you were out for this little bit of exercise you were allowed to take during the pandemic. And so you noticed it was there. And what that means is, when you look at your area you live in, instead of saying, let's demolish that hedgerow and put up a wall, let's cement over that area, I'm sick of that getting wet when it's rainy and slippy, you go, oh look, there's that flower, and I heard such and such in that class about it, and you can do it. So you just automatically become a guardian of nature simply because you've learned a few bits and pieces about it. You know, it's just because your attention's been drawn to the fact that it actually exists. And so the more people who are doing that, the more it's transforming completely naturally, without being told to do this and told to do that and told to, you know, just naturally, because you're interested and you realize that it's there and you appreciate it. And it's also being transformed and improved because it causes so much joy. And I think this is a key part of what we need to tune into as well, is doing things that create joy, because they're so effortless to do. You know, they don't feel like this. When they light us up, we do them because we want to do them and because it's so rewarding. And the more people that learn that, it's just the better, and the more everything benefits, because we've got cleaner air, it's nicer, it's gentler on our eyes because we're looking at less concrete stuff and flat surfaces and all these things that hurt our eyesight. And so everything improves, you know. So I really do think human beings need to wake up to the part that they are. It's not about going out visiting nature, actually realizing that they are nature, that they are connected in with this, because so much that's suffering and difficulty in people's lives, especially when they live in cities and big towns, is the isolation they experience, this individualness, this separateness, and also quite a bleakness. Unless somebody's got a job that they genuinely find is worthwhile, most people, a lot of people have bad feelings about the thing that they do, that they spend most of their time on. Add commuting to that then as well, and most of their life is pretty miserable. Connect that in then to, look, such and such is growing there. I'm going over, you know, I go over and I teach in London. It's full of plants if you get off the flipping tube. You know, you don't see it if you're hurtling around in smelly trains under the ground. If you're up above the air, up on the surface of the land, it's got gorgeous trees, it's got hazelnuts, it's got all this wild stuff growing around it. It's there, you know, it's there in cities. You don't need to live out in the countryside to experience this. So it's this connection and appreciation. And seriously, when you start to recognize this, you're never alone again. I genuinely mean that. So it's so healing, and gives humans so much purpose and connection and power.
Yeah, and nature is everywhere. Like even in the cities, it might be a blade of grass,
Yeah.
but if we can remember that incredible life force is everywhere.
Yeah.
It's in every atom, it's below our
Yeah.
feet. You know, if
Yeah.
we can connect to that, you know, and once
Yeah.
you start to look for it, you'll always see it
It's
because
everywhere, growing
yeah.
through the litter.
Uh,
Yeah, and as I always say to people when I take walks, you know, it might be a walk in the course, herb walk in the countryside, or a little 5-minute walk around a venue I'm teaching in London on the lunch break. And I show people go, oh, I can't believe you showed me all this stuff. And I say, and this is our environment trashed. Imagine what it could be like if we actually looked after it. You know, it's so giving, it's so abundant. It doesn't matter how often it's cut or sprayed with weed killer or whatever, it keeps coming back. Yeah.
yeah. And also if you have a window and you have light and
Yeah.
plant, it's
Yeah.
very it does something for us to look
Yeah.
after a plant.
Yeah.
And like I know I have a plant in a bathroom, and
Yeah.
I'll be married next year, 25 years. So this plant is 24 years old. So
Congratulations.
it's witnessed everything that's went on in our family. You know, so I have a couple of plants like that, but
Yeah.
plants grow with us, they nourish us,
Yeah.
they, you know, that there is this relationship we have
Yeah.
with them. So because I
Absolutely.
would be like you, I'd be very conscious of it just doesn't feel natural that people have been put into like concrete jungles. You know, it just
Yeah, and it's not when I say it as well, I'm not being anti-city. Cities can be beautiful, they can be full of plant life. They used to be, cities aren't new, you know, there's been large settlements in the world for thousands and thousands of years, but they had gardens and there wasn't this separation and trying to destroy nature the way that there was the way that there is just now. There's been a real sort of attack, and yet it continues to be there, you know. Yeah, I think it's the when you tune into what's in a city, um, then you just realize that it actually is everywhere. I just genuinely mean it. You're just never alone again, you know. You're just not. Yeah. Yeah, and when you realize the things that your ingredients come from, that these humble plants that produce really nourishing foods or really active medical substances, and you start to be able to spot what they are. It's so, I love that they're just plants. It doesn't matter which class I'm teaching, which level it's for, I'll always include at least one photograph of the plant that the medicine comes from, because I like to remind people that that is all and everything that it is. You know, that it's these really simple, humble things that have these incredible properties and powers that are there, that are that we can tune in to look after us so well if we choose to, you know. So it can be an advanced chemistry class that I'm teaching, but I've still got a photo of the source, because you can look at chemical names and go, oh, that's very clever, that's a very clever thing. But you know, if it's from a daisy, the same thing that you make a daisy chain from, it's just got a whole different other effect, I think. Yeah.
mm. So how can we deepen our relationship with the plant world to receive the gifts they bring? Would you have any wee tips on how we might deepen?
Yeah, I think just start to learn about them. But so you start by just pick a couple of them, you know. Obviously there's lots of safety stuff to do with learning anything medical, but also anything to do with collecting wild plants. So I don't mean just run off and do it by yourself and it'll all be fine, because it won't, you know. But if you can just start to learn about them, start with 3 plants that you recognize. Now everybody knows, well, depending on which part of the world you're in, most people know stinging nettles because we've been stung by them as a child. Most people know dandelions, and a lot of people will know the daisy chain plant that we've been talking about. Roses are another great one. There are hundreds of varieties of roses in the rosa family, and any of them can be used as a culinary ingredient, or as a herbal medicine, or for skincare. So I would pick a plant that you know, and just start to learn a few things about it. And you don't need to go and do them, but just to learn a few things about them is interesting, you know, and then see how often you can spot them. And just go gradually. You know, if you learned 3 new things a year, then in a decade you've learned 30 new things, you know, and some of the things that you learn each year you'll like and you'll repeat. And so you really, really build up your repertoire that way. But you don't, just do it gently. As I said, this is all I've done for a quarter of a century, but I still feel that I'm only scratching the surface. I'm always learning. There are loads of plants I don't know still, and I'm slow. I'm slow at learning them. I'm somebody who needs to be shown something over and over again, and then I go, oh yeah, you know. So don't rush at it, and especially in the age of apps. And don't use apps to identify plants. They're a nightmare. They frequently tell people that poisonous plants are edible, and the worrying thing that's come in this year, even more so than the apps, is all the AI. There are whole books being written and up for sale online just now that are totally generated by AI. So watch out for that stuff. You need to keep your wits about you. Have a look if you're thinking of buying a book or doing a course, because I've got no doubt there'll be AI generated courses out there if they're not there already. Have a look at who it's claimed the author or the teacher is, and see if you can find out if they're a genuine person. Usually when it's AI, it's pretty easy to find. When you eventually find a photo of the author, you can find the photos come from Shutterstock or somewhere that you buy photographs from. But you know, spend 10 minutes looking at that before you buy something, or use something free. There's a lot of that just now. It's like we're actually being made to look for the genuine, because the AI stuff is so prevalent now, and it's so wrong. It works so badly, certainly in my area of special expertise. I don't know if it works in anything else, but it's a nightmare in my work. And so what we're actually being forced to find is to look for something that's genuine and make real, genuine human connections with people again. So it's funny, like the more that artificial stuff is rising, I think the more it's actually going to have the opposite effect and push people back to real, genuine human connections. And you can use technology really well like that, as you're doing for this summit. And it can be, you know, use technology well and wisely, and you can create a lovely, warm learning environment and community, and you know, something that's really genuine. But yeah, you really need to be discerning. Yeah,
I'm so glad you're sharing that, because I have to say I wouldn't have been aware of that or to look
yeah,
into
it's
that.
just started happening in the last few months. I saw one last week or the week before, and somebody had posted in a Facebook group, here's this, whatever it was, encyclopedia of herbal medicine. We're looking for people to review it, blah, 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 blah. And I looked at it and I clicked on the social media pages for it, and they were all AI images of plants, which is always a bad sign if you're looking at a plant identification or foraging or plant medicine book. And then I looked at the author. It took me a wee bit of digging to find the author, the claimed author, and it was a photo of a woman with a plant, and it come from Shutterstock. So I just replied under the post to say, my feedback is that your book looks like it's entirely generated by AI. Do you have any proof that it's not? And it disappeared then. But there was one, you know, about 6 weeks before that was published that had hemlock in it as an edible plant, and hemlock is so poisonous, there's no antidote for it, and it was used to execute prisoners, and it had it in the book as an edible plant. So
Oh my goodness.
yeah. So it's really really look for the genuine. I think that's really, really, you know, if you want to make something stronger, threaten it.
Yes.
You know, it's really really interesting, and I think this stuff is rising, and it's totally beyond our control, because these big like people who work in tech, it's beyond their control. They're being laid off, they're losing their jobs, you know. So it's not like the tech industry, there's a part of it that's pushing it, but loads of creative people in the tech industry have lost their work. So yeah, that's it. It's the more that stuff comes, the more it's going to create stronger bonds between real people, I think. Yeah.
And is the hemlock the one that looks a bit like Angelica and it grows
Yes,
quite tall?
that's it. So it's in the carrot family of plants. And the carrot family of plants is, I think, the most frightening family of plants, because it's got carrots and parsnips, nice, friendly, edible things. It's got fennel, lovely, you know, culinary flavoring, and angelica, nice medicinal plant, and then hemlock and hemlock water dropwort, both totally and utterly deadly, no antidote, and they look very similar, you know.
They do, yes, because
Especially at
I've seen
different
them.
stages of growth. Hemlock water dropwort, before it flowers, looks like celery. And the amount of times I've heard, because foraging's got trendy and people just think they can go out and collect anything without any learning, you know. I mean, people train for years and years to learn to use plants. But anyway, the amount of times I've heard, oh, I found wild celery. I'm like, no, you haven't. You've got hemlock water dropwort, and it's deadly.
Scary. It's
Yeah,
actually
I mean,
quite
over and over
scary.
again.
Yeah, and you've
Yeah.
really drawn the you know, awareness to how important it is that we don't lose this knowledge that our
Yeah.
ancestors had, and that, like, you know, like it has to be
Yeah.
community orientated and heart to
Yeah,
heart.
and around your environment, you know, your land, what it looks like in the area you live in. So you'll see it, especially now where the weather gets so different. If you observe, if you're fortunate enough to live in the same place for a long time, you'll see the same land in lots of different weather conditions, and you'll see how different the plants are then. So so before I moved to Portugal, I lived in the same place in Ireland for 14 years. And there was just fields out the back of the house. They weren't mine, but you know, we had the right to roam, and so I would walk the fields. And I remember talking to the farmer about how much was growing in those fields and how many wild plants there were, and he was kind of bemused, you know. But I saw it in all these different conditions, and so I see the effect it has if it's a really cold winter or a really cold spring, or it's very windy and stormy just as the blossoms come out, and you know, the effect it has on the plants for the year when the flowers have been lost, so you don't get the fruits because the flowers have been blown away, and the lack of food that there is then in the autumn because the plant hasn't gone through its stage of developing from flower to fruit. So you really connect in. And so much to do with identifying plants and working with them is actually to do with the environment that they grow in, because they don't look the same in different parts of the world, in sandy soil or wet soil or whatever. It's a lot of it is to do with the environments that they live in. So you know, one of the differences between the hemlock and the cow parsley is well, I'll be careful saying that. I was going to say cow parsley is edible, but people use the common name cow parsley to refer to different plants, but there is an edible plant that some people call cow parsley. Now, the difference looking at that between hemlock and cow parsley, so hemlock deadly, cow parsley edible, you can't actually see a difference. Really, what you need to do is wear gloves and then cut the stem of the plant, and one of them's hollow and one of them isn't, and that's the difference. So AI is not going to detect that. You know, apps don't detect that. That's why they get it wrong so often.
And plants in nature, you know, I know I love to touch plants, but I was a wee bit aware of the hemlock and know not to touch it. But like I really get that plants really, you know, that thing about our relationship with plants that they appreciate, and I actually believe that plants begin to flourish in an area once we give them our attention.
They want
And our
people to
love.
know. They want people to know about them. They want
Yes.
people to use them. The animals love them and know them and use them. They want us to as well, because then the effect it has, if human beings know about these plants, is there's more of them.
And then, like you said, I'm so blessed. I've lived in this area for nearly
Yeah.
17 years. And I wouldn't have, at the beginning, I had a full-time business, so I wouldn't have had time to walk. But once,
Yeah.
maybe 5 or 6 years in, when I started my walks around the glen, and the
Yeah.
way I would describe it to you is nature is like, it's like singing to you. It amazes me, and I'm sure people see this in their gardens. It's like a
Yeah.
trumpet that sings to us, that these
Yeah.
flowers come up and then these flowers come up and these die
Yeah.
off and these come up. And the other thing I would notice about a wild area is there seems to be particular years where like a particular berry or plant, and I'm gonna just use the word, it's in its element.
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
year to
Yeah.
shine.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's to do with whatever just the circumstances that year have made it flourish. So maybe it was that it was really cold at a certain time of the year and that made it put its roots down further, so it got stronger and then it shot up, or that it was warm at the right time so it produced more above the ground, or whatever. You'll get years that are a hawthorn year or a dandelion year more so than other years, and it's because there's just been the right conditions for them, and it's absolutely their year to shine because the elements have all been with them, so that you're spot on. Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. Yeah.
It's lovely the way it works.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
It's this ongoing joy when you notice it and then seeing what's going to happen next time, and just this is what I mean about only scratching the surface. It's like the more I do, the more you think, well, I wonder why that is, and you can still see. I could sit and list all these things that I've still not done yet, that I haven't tried yet, even though I've been doing all these things for 25 years. There's so much out there. And as I've said, this is our environment trashed. Nature is designed to flourish and interact and cross and reproduce and create new stuff with ease, with absolute ease. And to adapt and thrive in all these different conditions. So I think when you start to learn about it tunes you back into something that's very real. And it gives you so much genuine hope, not an artificial hope, a real a hope that's got real base and core to it, because you can actually see and experience how easily life adapts and reproduces and creates new things and thrives.
Oh, that's so beautiful. That's really, really beautiful. Uh,
Yeah.
so we're coming to the end now.
Yeah.
We're getting closer to the end. And I just want to mention to everybody that Vivienne has a beautiful free gift. It's a lovely ebook featuring wild and wonderful herbs for herbal remedies, wild foods, and natural skincare. Thank you so, so much for
Welcome.
bringing this to the participants.
You're
And I
welcome.
want to mention also Vivienne, her website, it is www.theherbalhub.com. And all of Vivienne's details are going to be below this talk and on her speaker page. And Vivienne, your website, it's just bursting with information on all manner of herbs and their healing properties. And it's just such a pleasure to be with you today, Vivienne, and just your given, loving spirit. It's a joy to meet you and
Thank
to have you on the summit. And thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me, and thanks for, just tuning people in. You can make a difference, you can live a difference, and we're not isolated, and we just need lots of people doing the good, right things, and then it all lifts and it heals and it repairs and it thrives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you
Do
so
it
much.
simply and joyfully. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.